What if I told you that you could take all of the negative aspects of Heist and minimize them? Focus purely on the thing that you're there for, making money, getting currency. Get rid of all the annoyances of tons of doors and items to pick up and chests to open and all that kind of stuff, even rogues to gear. What if I told you that you could minimize pretty much every single bit of that? Take it all away and just focus on making bank. I posted a Heist video a little while ago now talking about the standard way that most people play Heist. Go in, open a bunch of chests, find what the final loot is, take it or not. And while I still do stand by that video, it is a good intro to Heist, there's another way that we can do Heist. If we boil Heist down to its most basic element, Heist is a process where we break into a place, steal a big valuable item, and we get out. And if we focus on particularly this aspect of it, get in fast, get the item, and get out fast, we open up the potential for Heist to become even more powerful than it was before. Now, I know recently there have been some content creators doing some more research on Heist, such as Firegrass's video talking about how Heist profits aren't as big as some people make them out to be, and although I think he got slightly unlucky in his results there, I do think that his information is good. When it comes to other styles of farming in the game right now, Heist isn't exactly the most profitable thing that you can do. Now, of course, I think there are other benefits to Heist, in the sense that it doesn't take a lot of investment of your character, it doesn't take a lot of skill, and the path to currency is consistent. These strategies don't really change. Whereas with other kinds of strategies in this game, those strategies change frequently, sometimes they stop working, sometimes you just don't get as much currency out of them, and they're very volatile in the sense that typically, once that strategy gets adapted too well and the items become too consistent, they aren't worth as much. Heist is never that popular, so it's been pretty consistent over the years. However, I found a Reddit post here a little while ago talking about a different way to run Heist, with a different kind of build, a different style, and a focus on efficiency. Now, this Reddit post made some pretty large claims. My claims on the normal way that you can run Heist is you can get up to about 10 Exalt per hour if things are going well, and if you are an experienced player who knows what they're doing and you are properly set up to do Heist. However, this person was claiming a minimum of 15 Exalt per hour, even upwards of 20 Exalt per hour when things were good. And I thought to myself, that's a lot of currency. That's almost double what I typically get from Heist. What is this guy doing differently? Well, it turns out that he has boiled Heist down to the absolute basic principles that I said before. Get in fast, get the item, and get out fast. So I spent a bunch of time. I did over 500 wings of blueprints, multiple hundreds of contracts, and quite a bit of time in Path of Building, and I've got all the results to show you in this video. Boys, your resident Heist enjoyer is here, and I know a lot of you seem to think that when I say Heist is underrated, you think that I mean the currency aspect. But no, I actually enjoy Heist. I've been Stockholmed into enjoying this mechanic. I do it so much that I actually have tricked myself into thinking that it's a good and fun mechanic. So if you are also a Heist enjoyer, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright boys, so we've got a pretty interesting build here that we're going to talk about. Now this video is equally going to be about this build as well as about the strategy, because they're kind of one and the same. You kind of need this build to do this strategy properly. But the build thankfully isn't too expensive to get going. You can scale it pretty well up to like 20-30 Exalt if you wanted to, even more than that if you really are wanting to make wrong decisions. But it starts working on as little as maybe just a few Exalt and potentially even cheaper than that. The thing that is really going to be the quote-unquote hard part is going to be getting a Lethal Pride with the Chainbreaker node. That's going to be easy now, but harder early on in the league, as well as getting Jewelry with Mana Regeneration on it. Beyond that, the rest of the gear that is required is quite easy to obtain. So, what is this build? Well, this build goes fast, and it doesn't die. That's pretty much all that this build functions as, is just runs as fast as humanly possible, and it makes sure that it does not die. Now, we obtain this in a bunch of ways, and I'll go over them in more detail down in the Path of Building, but the idea is that we focus mainly on gear that either gives us effectiveness of auras, or movement speed, or evasion for Queen of the Forest, as well as enough defenses to survive. Now, I do have things like Hands of the High Templar, but these are absolutely not needed. This got me like 15 movement speed or something, maybe even less than that, to be honest with you. But the rest of this gear is nothing crazy, right? There is no insane unobtainable gear. The two most expensive pieces that I have equipped right now are these gloves as well as the Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame with Avatar of the Chase. Neither of those things do you need, not even close. Just gets you going a little bit faster. So beyond the gear, how are we moving so fast? Well, we do have permanent uptime of phase run. As you can see up in the top left, by the time that the debuff is going off of us, we are already hitting the cooldown of it and hitting it again. We don't really use any other abilities most of the time. We have a little bit of loss on downtime on phase run if we're like at a door or something in Heist. But beyond that, we also do have almost permanent Berserk uptime. So I just enabled Berserk, and you'll see that we can go for quite a while with our Berserk. I haven't timed it in a while, but it's a pretty decent amount of time. Enough to get you all the way into the end of a blueprint, and then by the time that you've looked at your gem or whatever you're trying to do, it'll be able to get you out again. So the Berserk lasts for a very long time. I could get more mana regeneration if I wanted to. I could swap out to another synthesized implicit ring. I could get like a delve mana regeneration mod on my boots and maybe even gloves if I didn't want to go with these. But yeah, the rage just ended just now. I don't know how long that was. Beyond that, we do run a whole bunch of auras. These are mainly just defensives for our auras. We're not really getting any movement speed out of it besides the Watcher's Eye for Grace. And then we have pretty much permanent uptime on all of our flasks. Now, the way that we get this permanent uptime with our flasks is because we're a Pathfinder. On top of that, the vast majority of the points on our tree are literally just all of the good flask nodes. Being a Pathfinder, we do gain a bunch of flash charges. Now, I haven't even done Uber Lab. You could do Uber Lab, but all that you really get is this flask effect node and this flask effect node because none of the other major nodes are worth anything. You just take these two and it would make me go a little bit faster, but I don't really care at this point. But as you can see, just a bunch of flask nodes, a bunch of stuff that increases like the effect of onslaught and evasion and movement speed and enough defenses to survive. This build has a 100% chance to suppress. It's got pretty decent armor, like 30 something thousand. 25,000 if I'm just standing here, and more with Molten Shell, and I think we do have some physical damage reduction because of Berserk and such as well. 52,000 evasion just standing around, which is 94%, and a decent amount of recovery, maximum all resists. We have, I think, on the POB, if you level up a little bit more, you can get maximum chaos resist, and we got a little bit of block. We are also, of course, immune to all elemental ailments, so we really genuinely don't have much to worry about. That's pretty much it for the build. As for the different abilities that we do use a decoy totem specifically to make sure that the rogues don't get, attacked while they're trying to open a door. We don't do any damage, so this is our only real way besides having frost walls to keep the rogues from getting attacked. We don't need to use this too often. It's rare that the rogues really have struggle with opening the doors, especially after you gear them. Beyond that, we do have a stone golem. You have to turn off one of your big auras to summon the stone golem, and then you just turn the stone golem back on. You honestly don't need to use a stone golem. I never used it through all of the 500 blueprints that I did. I was just trying to figure out some more stuff to do with all the gem slots, and a stone golem is pretty much the only thing that I really came up with. Beyond that, there's not really much else that you can do. Cast when damage takens don't work because you're using an ability which is going to turn your phase run off. They also cost a lot of rage every single time that they proc and such. So using most abilities really isn't worth it. Even using the frost wall most of the time isn't worth it. We do have a dash. The dash is mainly just for getting over like obstacles and things like that. The dash is actually slower than if we were just, running instead. It does slow us down, so you don't use it for movement. You could use like shield charge or something, but that also slows us down. There's not really much use in doing any other abilities besides left clicking phase run and occasionally using decoy totem. Last ability that we do have is Molten Shell. I mainly use this before running through traps to make it very easy to go through them. We will do an example blueprint and I'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here in a little bit, but that's pretty much it for the build. All right, so let's talk about the strategy. Let's talk about how you actually make the money, right? Let's talk about how and what this build does to make Heist maybe a little bit more palatable and to potentially get upwards of like 15, maybe even 20 exalt at the max, but you average around 15 most of the time if you're doing everything properly with top speed. So the idea here is that we are simply going to be just doing white blueprints and white contracts as fast as we possibly can. We're ignoring everything except the very last item in everything. That includes deception contracts. When you're running the deception contracts, you literally ignore all of the items, you go straight to the end, you grab the item, and you exit. This is because all that we care about is the reveals. When it comes to blueprints, we're literally ignoring everything, running straight to the end, seeing if there's a gem that's worth something, and running out. So you might be thinking, well, with the contracts and blueprints costing so much money, that can't work, right? You can't make money off of it, right? Well, even though I did this on stream and we were in the process of figuring it out and everything, I did 500 blueprint wings, and to do that, I needed like, I think it was like around 300 reveals or something like that. I don't remember exactly how many reveals it was, but these are the results that we got. We got close to 40 primary grading lenses, 20 secondary regrading lenses, and then a bunch of very expensive gems. Now, the vast majority of these are like a couple exalt. There's a few gems in here which are like 7 to 8 exalt, and I apparently got relatively unlucky here. And on top of that, of course, you know, I did one test blueprint immediately after like I did all the changes of the build, and I found 10 exalt plus worth of jewels, and then I was like, okay, well, that's unfortunate because, you know, that like messes up my numbers a little bit, so I'll do like armament blueprints. And then of course, I got a tempering orb on the one armament blueprint that I did to test, which this is like 5.5 exalt, so even ignoring the 15 exalt I made in like 3 minutes, this is still like, I think it ended up when we factored time, cost, and all of the jewels. I did all the math on stream. It was like 14-ish exalt per hour, like 14 and a half. And that's with me, you know, doing stream stuff. Like I'm not being efficient. I'm like, you know, entertaining stream and doing everything else. And also you should go and watch stream at twitch.tv/bigducks to see more stuff like this. When we're evaluating the cost here, it was the cost of buying all of the blueprints, buying all of the contracts, buying all of the rogues markers, as well as anything else that we needed to be able to do this. Factoring all of that in, we made a pretty decent amount of money. This is somewhere in the range of like 230 exalt worth of stuff. You can bulk sell these items here, and I suggest that you do because it increases the like amount of money that you get by like 25% or more. And of course, that is assuming that all of these gems sell. Now, here comes the problem. We are super late in the league. There's basically no one playing. So the numbers are a little bit skewed against me. I got like 14 exalt per hour here, but in a earlier section of the league, the cost of all the materials would be lower and the gems would probably sell a little bit better. I'm probably not even going to sell these gems just because it's the very end of the league and I don't really care that much. But being relatively fair, meaning like taking 10%-ish, maybe a little bit more off the top of the cost of all of these, ended up at around like 14-ish exalt per hour. So how do you do this? How does it work? So the whole idea is that you don't really have to worry about the rogues very much anymore. When it comes to setting up the rogues, the only thing that I would change is that there's this modifier that's really rare that gives you a chance to open up a second like heist target item in blueprints. I would put that on all of the rogues, as well as just things that make you move faster. Alert level doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. All that matters is opening stuff faster, job speed, like levels to all of the main rogues, as well as like the haste skill. None of this duplication stuff matters whatsoever. The only item that actually does matter here is Gianna's. You do want the 10% chance on completing a heist to generate an additional reveal with Wakano. This will over time save you a bunch of money still, so I would suggest investing in this just like you did before. But the rest of the gear is almost irrelevant now. You want to get cloaks, and you want to give them the job speed, and of course you can try to get that extra special mod that gives you like a chance to like not activate the alarms at the end of the heist, but it's pretty expensive and it's pretty hard to get, so I'm gonna do it, but you know, we'll see. And then another thing that you do is that you are going to be running these blueprints white. Now the way that you do this is you're going to take the blueprint, you're going to run over to Wakano, you're going to reveal the blueprint. Now I've used up all my Gianna reveals, but we're just going to do this through Wakano. It doesn't matter what you do, you're only revealing wings. We're not going into any of these rooms, none of them. We're not going into a single one of them. So you reveal all of the wings, you go down to the planning room. Doesn't matter who you put in here, okay? You're literally just clicking whoever is on the left at all times. The reason for this is you just want to get the person who's going to do the job faster than everyone else. Now what this means is that it does mean that you are going to have to gear all of the rogues instead of just the ones that you normally take. Now the key to doing this efficiently is you need to do everything in bulk. The idea is that I bought like an entire stash tab worth of blueprints, and I did what I just did there on every single one of them. So I would get a full inventory, I would go to Econo, I would hit reveal, I would reveal the 3 wings, take it out, put the next one in, reveal the 3 wings, take it out, put the next one in, and then I would do the same down in the like bottom section. You would just put all of the rogues in for every single one of them, and then you just spam these back to back to back. So now that we've got the blueprint, we're going to go ahead and drop it in here, and I'll show you how I run a heist on this build. So the whole idea here is being efficient. Be efficient with your time, efficient with your movement, and I typically go in a clockwise pattern, starting with the top right. We'll run into here, and we just run. That's it. That's all that we care about. We're just going as fast as we possibly can. I do suggest that you set up your like little mini map there so you can see whenever you are running up to a door. It'll make you a little bit more efficient with that. And as you can see, I've increased the speed of the build a decent amount here, so I've kind of gotten a little bit worse, but we go to the end. Division Blood Rage is bad. Don't care about Scourge Arrows, Soul Rend, Earthbreaker, and Mirror Arrow. None of those matter, so we're just going to run right back out. Now, you might have seen these little trap sections that have a bunch of traps on them. The way that you deal with these is you do need to hit Molten Shell or just spam all of your flasks really quickly. Now, when it comes to spamming all of your flasks really quickly, the main reason being is that we are a Pathfinder, and it makes it so that we gain a bunch of life back every time that we spam each of our flasks, and we have a lot of them. Because we have Master Surge, and it gives us 6% of our life back whenever we use a flask. Just going to go through, we'll move on to the next one. And the amount of money that you're going to make doing this strategy, it all depends on how quickly you can get through these, get these done, and how quickly you can get, in and out of each of the blueprints. So in that regard, we don't want to be spending a lot of time or wasting a bunch of time on small amounts of currency. So if we go in here and none of the gems that we're going to be picking up are worth like anything more than like 70, 80 chaos, it's absolutely not worth picking them up. I think melee splash is good. I don't remember. Now, for the most part, yeah, melee splash isn't good. But either way, normally I would look it up, but I'm not going to pull up another screener now. The problem with picking a gem, especially if it is one that is not worth a ton, is that this escape sequence is significantly longer, especially if you have to open a bunch of doors. You might see that I'm dropping down like a decoy totem to prevent the people from being hit. If they really have a lot of issues, all that you got to do is drop down the frost walls on top of them, spam your flask going through there, or hit Molten Shell. Molten Shell only really helps through hits, so you do have to remember that. You keep on keeping on. But you can kind of see. We're literally just like zooming through all of these as quickly as we possibly can. Here is some traps. Now, if you don't hit Molten Shell before going through one like that, they're gonna kill you. They do a lot of damage. So you really do either have to use Molten Shell or spam a whole bunch of flasks. Because I'll show you, just walking through here, even with Berserk on, like, look at how much damage I'm taking if I just like go about it very slowly. You can get unlucky and you can absolutely die to it. Right, Shock Nova, Herald of Purity, Rallying Cry, Blade Vortex. Yeah, none of those are worth anything. So we're just going to run out really quick. We're just focusing completely on speed and efficiency. Now, the thing about making money with this strategy is that you can't just run 1, 2, 3, 4 blueprints and expect to do okay. You're going to run into situations where you don't get anything for like maybe 5 to 10 blueprints. That's going to be really unlucky because you should be getting because at least 10% of the time you should be getting primary grading lenses, and 5% of the time you should be getting secondary grading lenses. So it shouldn't be that bad. Divergent Leap Slam, that's the damage one. Holy Flame Totem, Dual Strike. But like, as I said, we didn't actually get anything worthwhile here. That's not worth that much money, at least according to my filter, but maybe it is, I don't know. I know one of the melee splashes is worth something. But eventually you'll kind of get an idea in your head of what gems are worth money at any given time. You run in, you run out, and then we would just run straight into the next blueprint. That only took me a couple of minutes, even with me like trying to explain while we did it. Now, we do the same thing for Deception Contracts. You run straight to the end, grab the item, and run out. You don't pick up any of the rooms, you don't open any of the items, you don't do anything except just grab that last final heist target and get out of there. So that is the entirety of the strategy. In, out, done. So the next question that I posed myself is, how am I going to do this for a league start scenario? How am I going to go about maybe doing this either from having no currency? How do I transition into this build? How do I work towards it? And the strategy that I came up with and the way that I leveled this character is I leveled this character as a Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder, which swaps over very easily. It uses a lot of the same nodes, a lot of the same points on the tree. very, very close where like all the nodes go. It only took me, I think, like 30 regrets, maybe 40 regrets, something like that. You play Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder all the way up until you're around like 85, like level 85. You can even start doing Heist if you want to, but you get to level 85, you get enough money from either doing heisting or whatever else that you're doing to swap over into like the rares that you need, a 4-link Queen of the Forest, get all the items that you need. You need Chainbreaker, enough regrets to swap over, all of that, right? Once you have all those items, you swap over into this build. Have to make sure that you have enough money to be able to sustain Heist indefinitely. What I'm going to do that is that I'm going to hit like level 67, 68, and I'm going to do the level down trick where you go to Wakano, you buy a whole bunch of the good contracts from him, you run them, you level up once, you force yourself to level down with the recipe. I don't remember what it is. It's like a regret orb and some stuff. And then you go back to Wakano, who has reset because you've leveled, and you buy more contracts from him. I'm going to do that until I can make enough money to afford the first basic level of gear and go on from there. Now, you are still going to have to do all of the purchasing of contracts, the purchasing of deception contracts, the purchasing of blueprints. All of that is still going to have to be done through TFT and everywhere else. You can go watch my other heist video, which if I remember to, I will link up in the top right corner now. That video will tell you how to do all of the specifics of that. You're still going to need all of that information. So lastly, I'm going to jump over to Path of Building so I can show you a little bit about what's going on in there, some of the gear that you require, and some of the stats that this character actually gets up to. Okay, so recently Path of Building did go through some pretty substantial changes. There are multiple skill sets now that you can go through. They have changed around some of the locations, like the God powers are up here. We have this nice nifty new Find Timeless Jewel indicator, which is pretty cool. I'll talk about this in another video at some point closer towards League start. But the idea here is that at the very peak end top of the build with all of the gear that my character has, we have a movement speed modifier of 622%. That's with everything going and, you know, just full on all of the gear that my character has. This is when we're zooming through those heists, 622%. However, if you are worried that, like, you know, the Peripetia with all of the specific modifiers on it and the Devoto's Devotion, the 6-link Queen of the Forest, hands out. If you're worried about all of this and how expensive this is going to be, well, we can swap over to the basic versions of the skills. We can swap over to the basic version of the gear. We can swap over to the basic version of the tree, which is level 85. You'll see that we've still got 517% movement speed, and this is with a basic Ichimonji, a basic Peripetia, meaning just like go get mana regeneration on it. If you can't get mana regeneration, then is what it is, just get whatever else. It is a helmet that has reduced rage cost of Berserk. Just find any helmet, enchant it with Eater of Worlds until you get mana reservation, life and resists, a 4-link Queen of the Forest. You don't need anything else. The auras are a 4-link in this version of the build. Some gloves with resistances on them, some boots with some movement speed, and whatever other stats that you need. Enchant action speed on them. An amulet crafted with, I think it is Essences of Misery until you get life. Pretty much all that you're looking for. Enchant it with Sovereignty. If you can't afford Sovereignty, you probably can't afford this build anyways. It's like 3 silver oils. Some rings, once again, crafted with the same essences. Just looking for life. You can get resistances on these if you need to, but even with no resistances on most of this gear, we're still well over cap. And then a belt with reduced flash charges and increased flask effect duration. Get whatever you can here. Then we've just got 5 flasks that have the gain charges when you're hit by an enemy mod on them. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you're not getting hit very often, why do you have gain charges when you're hit by an enemy? The main reason for going this modifier over other things initially is the fact that those traps that you saw, the ones where like either the beams or the traps on the ground, those are considered a hit. So what you can do is you can just run through there, and if all of your flasks do have gain charges when you're hit by an enemy, your flasks will just repeatedly fill, and you can just sit there and literally just like piano flask all of them at the same time, and it will keep your life up enough to be able to get through the traps. Alternatively, of course, just hit Molten Shell, but sometimes when you're going really, really super fast, you don't have Molten Shell up, and there's like 2 or 3 more layers of traps. You just spam this button. When it comes to the jewels, we've just got Assassin's Haste. This is from a quest. Lethal Pride is one of the few items that you will need to get. The build's not going to function without it. Doesn't matter which Lethal Pride you get as long as it is under a Koya. You don't need a fancy one. You don't need one with like super special crazy mods. You can use a pure talent, although you don't really need to use this. It's just a nice amount of movement speed. You just get a random gem instead. And then a Watcher's Eye with movement speed while affected by Grace. I don't think I have to tell you that this isn't required. It's literally just 15% movement speed, but it's relatively cheap. This one right now with just the Grace mod is like 20 chaos or something. The reduced extra damage from critical strikes is nice. You can get it if you want to, but there's a couple other mods that are nice as well. But that's all that you require. You've got a Fizz max hit of like 88,000, 37 to 43,000 lightning max hit, and 11,000 max hit from chaos. You've got about 4,000 life, but you don't really get hit almost often at all. You've got 85% chance to evade with this level of gear, a decent amount of physical damage reduction. You got 90% as long as you do have, where is it? Molten Shell on, but we'll even turn Molten Shell off here. Still 54,000 max hit, 23,000 max hit from these, 6,000 max hit there. You're not going to die that often. These are just random mobs in a essentially white tier 16 map, or even maybe a tier 14 map early on. So, still 90% physical damage reduction, still 25-25 block, 100% spell suppression, maximum resistances. On the later game version of it, you also can get your chaos resistance from here. You can get some more chaos resistance on your gear, but that's the idea. Now, there are notes in here. These are not going to be as extensive as my normal notes because it's kind of a weird, different build. Configuration should be set up properly, the different item sets, the different skill sets, as well as the different trees that are available here. So hopefully you should have everything that you need. And that is going to be it for the video. So this is pretty much pushing Heist to its limit, and I am going to attempt to league start with this and see where it goes. I don't know how well it will do, but we have to test it out somehow. But thankfully, even if it fails, I can just do something different. But that's going to happen closer towards the beginning of next league. So remember, boys, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.